Hi, welcome to another episode of How They See Us. I'm Denise Herd, and I'm your host and president, founder of Herd Strategies. And I'm so excited to be here again today. We have another great conversation lined up. So, if you've been with us before and you've seen previous episodes, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. If this is your first time joining us, welcome for the ride. I'm glad you're here. Tell a friend. So, today we have been spending a lot of time talking about volunteerism and Blacks in philanthropy and giving back and supporting your community. We've been having a lot of internal talks here at Herd Strategies about these topics and really looking at why we volunteer, why we give, why we donate, and then also why some people don't. And so I thought, after talking to the team, we all believed this was a conversation that we needed to have on a broader scale. So I decided to invite my dear friend and an amazing philanthropic expert and subject matter expert, Dr. Michael Twyman, to join me to have a conversation about Blacks in philanthropy. So, Dr. Twyman, hi.
Hello, Denise.
I am so glad to see you.
I am delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes. And so maybe down the road, we can share a little bit about our relationship and how long we've known each other and how I've watched your amazing career flourish over the years. I won't say decades because, that makes us
Actually, it
sound
has
old.
been decades, but it
It
does
has
make it
been
so long, doesn't it?
decades. It has been decades, but I'm so glad that you're here today because this is your area of expertise. And I will tell you, Dr. Twyman, I was just so amazed when I learned that you were going to take a path down philanthropy and that this was what you were going to dedicate your career to. And I just thought, I've just always been in awe of you for making that decision because that's a very intentional and strategic decision. You don't see a lot of people who look like us deciding that's going to be their career, their passion. And so I want to share that with you just on a personal note, just how proud I am and in awe I am of you and the work that you've done in this space over the years. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you so very much. And it's Mutual Admiration Society. I have watched this trajectory of your career as well as Herd Strategies and the great work that you're doing in the community and beyond. And it's just a wonderful thing to have known you win and to be on this journey with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. So let's get down to business. What is Black philanthropy? Is that even like a phrase, or is that something like we made up as Black people? What is Black philanthropy?
Well, I think that's an excellent question and a great place to start because when we think of philanthropy in its real basic sense, and that is the giving of one's time, talent, and treasure. So we know from our early African traditions that the sense of community and the both desire and the ethos around being able to use whatever resources that you have for the greater good is very natural to us as a people. And
Mhm.
so when you think of Black philanthropy, you really have to take it back to its early roots. And that's before there was a science and before other cultures, including Greek and Europeans, continue to, quote, sophisticate or to professionalize this art of philanthropy. We as a people were doing it early and often in ways that don't look like today's giving with capital campaigns and fundraising strategies and all the marketing that goes around being able to have metrics and a science to the giving, but
Mhm.
just as the art itself of knowing that you exist and your purpose for being here is not for yourself but for others, and how we as a people have
Mhm.
been more than generous, not only within our own communities, but supporting the things that we believe help
Mhm.
make a better society. And so Black philanthropy really is tapping into our early origins and the tradition of Africans and the legacy of really being able to share that which has been given to us in ways that benefit the larger society.
So I'm going to see if I can articulate this question that I have, because it bubbled up when you talked about the origins of Black philanthropy, that it transcends decades. It transcends, it goes further back than we actually realize as a Black people. And so how has the European way of exercising philanthropy changed the narrative of
Yes,
how we give? Because I'm sure that how philanthropy was executed back in the 1800s or even the 1700s is very different for
of
us.
course.
It looks very different because of the various influences that change the narrative and the direction of our lives as
Right.
Black people. So can you speak a little bit about those influences and how that has either
Sure.
advanced or even just just redirected how we've been able to be Black philanthropists?
Sure. And I think a lot of it is really definitions and allowing what has been the European and the white dominant um, definition of what philanthropy means. One, to equate it to wealth, and that being the both way that we measure what giving looks like is only through the lens of people who we consider to be wealthy. So this idea of doing good or providing charity or charitable work is very rooted in this idea that white supremacy, like most of anything in our society, was the mark or the standard
Got you.
for being able to say, oh, this is philanthropy. After you've amassed a certain amount of wealth, it is your obligation then to, quote, either give back or to support things that are of a charitable nature. That is only one lens and has been oftentimes the dominant lens. And so oftentimes individuals don't see themselves as philanthropists. We
Wow.
know, particularly in our religious tradition, we have as a people, and it's statistically proven, even up until this time, we are more generous in giving, and more of our disposable income is donated and given to charitable purposes than
Yep.
actually our white counterparts. And we don't talk about that.
Really? Are there specific areas that rise to the top, specific categories or types of organizations that we are more in line to give to?
It's an excellent question, and it plays off of the title of this podcast, When They See Us. We tend to be generous around things where we're able to see ourselves and people who look like us
What we say all the
benefiting
time. It's what we say
from
all the time. If you
our giving.
yes, yes, yes,
And it
yes.
gets overlooked over and over again. And so when we're able to tap into the fact that we are all often stepping up and the first ones to be able to give to those things that are important to us, and where we see ourselves in the beneficiaries of the giving. That is not only with the treasure, that's also with the time and the talent as well. And so it doesn't mean that exclusively we only support things
Right.
that benefit the Black community, but in many ways it is a motivation. And so when we look at our NAACPs, our urban leagues and institutions, our churches and our fraternal and civic organizations that are a huge part of our philanthropy and our giving, again, not only of our treasure, but our time and talent. You
Time, our
know,
time.
firsthand, right?
So I wish that you were in here. I wish that people are watching that were in here, because all three of us, our producer, Selena, who's behind the scenes, and you and I, we all belong to Black Greek lettered organizations. And when you said time, we're like, yes, Lord.
Yes, all of our time.
All of our time. Yes. And they take our treasures too.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And time is money. Um,
Right. Right.
and it's interesting. Just a quick digress to the idea of our fraternal and sorority organizations. It's so, I'm sure you run across this when you may say, oh, I'm going to a sorority event this weekend, and somebody look at you, a person who's not African American, and like, you've been
You
out
said
of college for years. What do you mean it's your what? That's foreign to them. We know it's a lifetime commitment, right?
right.
Well, and that speaks to how we even see our philanthropy. It's not a one-off for us. It's not something that we did in college, or we were engaged in community service because we were a part of the fraternity when we were in college. No,
Right.
it's lifelong giving of
Right.
service, of time, of talent, and treasure. That's one
Right.
example. And many of us spend a lot of our philanthropic resources toward organizations that, again, are of service and benefit our communities. Many of them civic, social organizations. And I think that's also a distinct difference in terms of Black Greek letter organizations, is that we have way more in common than we are different when it comes to our commitment
Oh yeah. Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
That is
Oh yeah. Yeah.
across every Black Greek letter
Yeah.
organization.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll come together. And when we come together, it's a
Oh,
power
yes.
thing. It is a
Yes.
power. I mean, we've seen that just recently in some things. Well, it's not, though it's not philanthropic, it was political, when we saw some things that were being done and possibly could compromise the integrity of our HBCUs down south, and even our Greek lettered organizations. We came together as as a body to
Yes.
unite. So yes, 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 yes.
Well, and
And
I just would add to that the
uh,
importance of using social and political capital in
mhm,
that way, so that when we're looking at issues, that it doesn't rest just with one organization, but
mhm.
coming
Yeah.
together,
Mhm,
coalescing, and really having that
mhm,
larger big tent and coalition to be
mhm,
able to really influence and advocate for an issue has
mhm,
so much power when we do
mhm.
it together.
I agree 1000%. I totally agree. Let me ask you something, because you've been at this work for some time and you've done a lot. I mean, we don't have enough time to go down your list of accomplishments. We didn't even run down your resume, which we probably should have done when we introduced you. So I apologize for that. But I would be remiss if we didn't spend just a little time just talking about the work that you've done and how the things that you've done to impact the landscape where Blacks and philanthropy is concerned. And I really want to make sure you also talk about things from an academic perspective as
Sure.
well, because you've been
Yes.
very influential in that space. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Well, two things. And the first is standing on the shoulders of some people who were really trailblazers in the field of philanthropy, particularly as it relates to foundation work.
Mhm,
Um, that still in 2023 is a predominantly white space. When you talk about institutional philanthropy,
mhm,
by and large, the boards of trustees and directors across the country of all the foundations, major foundations, as well as even medium size, 85 to 90% of those boards are led and comprised of white people in
Is
2023.
is
And our
that due to generational wealth? Is that due to my grandfather, my father, my like it's just passed down from family
some
members?
of it is that,
Okay.
but I think, understand that it is a power source. Philanthropy is big business. And
Mhm.
so oftentimes we're pulling from wells that are full of individuals who have been in leadership positions, either in the private sector or have a connection as well as a personal relationship with people within the organization. And so I think that's a part of it. And although there's a lot of discussion around continuing to diversify nonprofit and particularly foundation boards, same is true with the makeup of program officers and those who are staff in philanthropic organizations. There's been a real move towards increasing the number of women in leadership positions in the sector. But again, it has not kept pace with persons of color, primarily similar to the beneficiaries of affirmative action. White females have had greater opportunities in those spaces of leadership, even within our philanthropic organizations. And in many cases, African American males and Latino male and female are still grossly underrepresented in the field. And so there's a need for that. So switching to academia and being at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy and seeing what's kind of coming in the door, because this is our next generation of leaders, in many cases coming into the sector.
So that's the Lilly School of Philanthropy at IUPUI here in Indianapolis, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome.
There are still a small number of, I would say, Black students. There are a number of international students, just as that's true in the larger IUPUI population. But the school has very few African American males, Black males, and a spattering of Black females. And so when you look at the pipeline, now the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy has a greater emphasis on the fundraising side of philanthropy than it does on the grant making and the giving side of philanthropy. And that is even more highly skewed to that sector of philanthropy, or that subsector of philanthropy is highly skewed towards white males. And if you are familiar with most nonprofit organizations, think about the profile of most of the development officers or the major fundraisers, particularly around major gift officers. Those tend to be white. And again, slightly more white males than white females. I've had organizations say to me that they are unwilling or not inclined to risk with some of their donors putting Black fundraisers in front of white, they're white wealthy donors. And I've also heard it around age, regardless of color, that certain people are too young or would not be a good match to some of the donors from a cultivation and solicitation standpoint. So there's much work to be done there. And we have to really lean into looking at different ways that people give, as well as traditions, as we are, that oftentimes are very culturally oriented, and one size does not fit all. And a lot of times when we're looking at the science of philanthropy, again, all the metrics around how to raise money, how to run a successful campaign, how to attract high wealth donors, how to close the deal. All of those tend to be things that, again, are rooted in not only methods, but appealing to those who we consider are high wealth potential. And again, those who are often maybe to give at a different level, or a level that's more commiserate, comfortable, or that corresponds to their capacity, are often overlooked. And so a
Mhm.
lot of times people don't give of any color, but particularly African Americans
Mhm.
are don't give because they're not asked. There are a lot of assumptions made about our interest as well as our potential for giving. And so a lot of times we're just overlooked.
And it's funny because I've experienced that firsthand. I think about, a few boards that I've been invited to serve on. And I've said, like, thank you so much for reaching out to me. No one has ever,
Mm-hmm,
ever reached out to me to find
mm-hmm,
out what am I interested in, what are my passions. And interestingly, there's a board, an organization I donate some time and talent and treasures to, that I've donated treasures for many years and
mm-hmm.
have never been asked anything above what I was just doing on my own, and then so it's interesting how people don't ask us sometimes. And so I want to go into another question that kind of this is a great springboard for that, because I would like to know, is it truth or myth that there are disparities in giving between Black donors and white donors?
Well, disparities in terms of actual amounts, or be
The
more
giving
specific.
gap. Maybe the giving gap. Is the gap for Black organizations wider
Oh,
than
oh,
the gap
for
for,
organization. Yeah,
yeah, the margin? Thank you. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there is some data that would suggest that there are. I don't think it's been really determined as to all the reasons and the things that go into why that is the
Mhm.
case. I do know, and I don't know if this addresses your question, but I've seen it firsthand that
Mhm.
oftentimes with Black organizations, there are standards that are required of them that are not required of other organizations. And so, from a foundation giving standpoint,
Mhm.
a lot of times the white organizations will often get the benefit of the doubt, or they'll see the board list,
Mhm. And then,
or they
yeah.
know who the CEO is.
Yeah. Yeah.
The questions asked, that's enough. And a lot
Right.
of times there is this the level of trust does
Mhm.
not extend as
Mhm.
often to many Black-led organizations and organizations that serve primarily or
Yeah.
predominantly Black people.
It's almost like there's a few, many more hoops that some of our Black organizations have to jump through in order to gain access to certain types of funds coming from foundations.
That's
And
exactly right.
a higher level of accountability um, that is exhibited. And yeah, and we've both lived through that ourselves with
Yes,
organizations that we've worked for,
yes,
and that we've been affiliated with, that the level of reporting is almost like you're trying to report me out of this,
exactly right.
it
Yes,
puts up so many barriers that I can't access what I need to access in order
there
to
you
survive.
go.
Then you
Yeah,
see someone else just skating right through.
right.
So we've
Exactly.
been through
Yeah.
that.
And
We've
so
been,
the issue of both conscious and unconscious bias that
yeah.
play into those decisions and that oftentimes are a part of the fabric. I
Mhm.
don't think often that it comes with malicious intent,
Mhm.
but it's enough of a pattern
Mhm.
that it has to be checked and called out when it does
Mhm.
occur, or else
Absolutely.
it continues to perpetuate the cycle.
So you've done a lot here. So here in the city of Indianapolis, with respect to philanthropy, you've worked for a trust. You've been involved with organizations and helping guide them. Can you talk? I really want to talk a little bit about the work that you've done and how it's inspired you in the different decisions that you've done, and the various contributions you've done in the city. So I want you to toot your own horn a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm uncomfortable with that part of it, but I will talk a little bit, give you this example, which I think maybe kind of capsulizes not only my commitment to
Mm,
philanthropy, but how I've addressed my own personal philanthropy, both formally and informally. And so the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation is the custodian of the Dr. Michael Twyman Endowment Fund. And
Yes.
one of the things that I really both appreciate about the staff and the relationship is that we are in continuous conversation and dialogue
Mm-hmm.
around what motivates me and what are the specific things that I would like to champion, and really tailoring my giving and my support to the things that are most important to me. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I think when we have those type of opportunities to be able to really kind of self-direct, because again, that's what the data shows us, is that particularly with millennials, they have to feel a direct connection.
They
It's not
do.
about just writing a check. It's about really having a true relationship, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it takes time,
Mm-hmm.
but it really can have much more satisfying results when you're invested not beyond just the check, if you will, and are able to really direct and to give input to how you
Mm-hmm.
would like to see your investments,
Mm-hmm.
where you would like to see your investments, and the things that you would really like to support. Because, as you well know, any nonprofit has all these menu of opportunities and have more needs than they have resources. And
Right.
so, and it does take an extra measure of time and effort to figure out what Michael Twyman may want from some other donor. But
Mhm.
that's the type of work that has to be done. And I think back to your point earlier, you didn't say this, but I often say it: if you don't ask, you can guarantee you're not going to get. But
Right.
and so, not making again the assumptions, but really giving people opportunities to see how they might want to engage. So sometimes, and there's a cycle for anyone's giving. There might be one year, and you know this as a business person, there might be one year where you're really able to maximize your giving in certain areas, and then
Mhm.
the next year, just depending on other variables, you
Mhm.
may, shift it up. You might, mix it
Mhm.
up a little bit, right? And
Mhm.
so if we then continue to value the relationship, I'm going
Mhm.
to treat you the same in the
Mhm.
year when you gave 15% less than you did the year before, because I want
Mm.
to continue you to have a relationship with you.
Relationship.
It's not my time that I spend with you is not based on the amount of money that you're giving me.
Mhm.
It's about valuing the relationship. Does that
That's a
make sense?
good point. Mhm. So we have just a few minutes left, and I don't want to get in trouble with Selena by going over time. So, but I do want, if you could just, in the last couple of minutes that we do have together, being a philanthropist, giving, donating, sharing of your time, talent, and treasures is achievable.
It
It's
is.
not
It is.
something that's far reaching. And so I would love for you to share just a little guidance or advice or counsel for someone who's, wanting to explore philanthropy but feels intimidated, or that I don't have enough to make a difference.
Right. I think one of the things that we can do as a village and a larger community is continuing to lift it up as a obligation for young people, so
Mhm.
that we create a sense of philanthropy and giving at early ages, so that it becomes natural.
Mhm.
It pretty much was that way in our generation, but we didn't have a name for it, right? So
Mhm.
our parents and our extended family and community exposed us to opportunities for service, correct?
Mhm. Oh yeah, we
But
all did it. We all did it.
exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Again,
So
we didn't have a sophisticated name for it. And
Mhm.
so continuing to just really encourage that amongst young people,
Mhm.
uh, as well as to adults, and opportunities that I think go beyond just um, our resources, and really looking at time and talent as well. And we got to do a better job. The sector has to do a better job of quantifying and looking at the added value of time and talent, which I guess what makes it so difficult is that in many cases it is almost impossible to measure, right?
Right.
But putting some greater metrics around the different ways that we give, the different ways that we are able to give. And everybody has an opportunity as well as a responsibility.
So as I wrap up, one final question. What does the future look like for Blacks in philanthropy? What's out there on the
I would
horizon?
like to think that it's bright. There has been in our post COVID-19 and George Floyd era a opening within the philanthropic sector, specifically around racial equity. That's in both red and blue states. And I think if we're able to see that this is not just a one-off and we missed that bullet. Okay, we're past all of that now. We can go back to the way it was. Really seeing that there is a space and a place for Blacks and other people of color to be leading in this area and given the opportunities to lead. We've been doing it for a long time, and we need to be getting credit for it, as well as we need to be given more opportunity to have greater influence in the sector.
That makes sense. All righty. Well, thank you, Dr. Twyman, for being our guest today. I think that you shared a whole lot of knowledge. I think you dispelled a lot of myths and a lot of assumptions and even stereotypes about philanthropy. So I appreciate what you brought to the table. And so if anyone ever wanted to follow you or learn more, can you leave us, how can we get in touch with you, or what website should we look at as we round this
out? Go to InExcelsiusConsulting.com. That's INEXCELSIS. That is the name of my firm. That's where you can find me. And I'm also on social media, Michael Twyman.
So thank you, Dr. Twyman, for joining us today.
Thank you so very much. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to the continued great work that you're doing, as well as inviting more people into the field of philanthropy.
Awesome. All right, you take care. So thank you so much. So as you can tell, that was so exciting. That was amazing, an amazing conversation. That is why I love doing this podcast, how they see us, a conversation about Blacks in philanthropy, how they see us, and I hope that you learned something from today's conversation. I just want to say also thank you to Selena Coles, who's our account manager here at Herd Strategies. She's the producer behind the scenes, keeping us all in line, making sure we don't go over time, and making sure I don't ask questions that I'm not supposed to be asking. So anyway, thank you, Selena, for all your hard work pulling all this together. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you for our next episode of How They See Us. Bye.